In the Kute Siches, Chelik Yud Aleph, page 149, the Rebbe talks about Lifnei Iver Lisite Michshel. There's a posik that says, in front of a blind person, you're not allowed to put a stumbling block. And from there, the Gemara learns out that you're not allowed to cause somebody else to do an Aveira. And if you cause somebody else to do an Aveira, you're over on the lav of Lifnei Iver Lisite Michshel. And the Rebbe discusses there whether this lav is a Isur Kloli or Isur Proti. That means, is this a general Aveira, that no matter which Aveira you cause somebody to do, you're over on the same lav, whether you cause somebody to Mechala Shabbos Chas v'Sholem or to eat Chometz on Pesach Chas v'Sholem, you're over on the same lav, the lav of not causing somebody to do an Aveira. Or is Lifnei Iver a prat in every Aveira? If you cause somebody to Mechala Shabbos, you're over on Lifnei Iver of Shabbos. If you cause somebody Chas v'Sholem to eat Chometz on Pesach, you're over on the Isur of Lifnei Iver of Chometz. And the Rebbe quotes this Chkira from the Ragachover. And then the Rebbe says in the Order 65 that you could say that this depends on the two opinions that we have, whether if you actually physically put a stumbling block in front of a blind person, as the simple words mean, are you also over on the lav of Lifnei Iver? And the Rebbe makes it clear that if you say that it is kipshute that you are over, then we would assume, and the Rebbe explains why, that this is a prat in every Aveira. But if you hold you're not over, then this is a Isur Kloli. But in the middle of this order, it says, or you could say the opposite. That if the Torah means kipshutei, then it's a Isur Kloli. But if the Torah doesn't mean kipshutei, you're not over kipshutei, then it's Isur Proti. And the Rebbe explains why. Now the fact that you could say the opposite is in brackets. So obviously it means that the main svara that the Rebbe has is the other way, that if it's a Isur also not to put physically a stumbling block, then it's a Isur Proti, and if you're not Aver when you do it, Skipshute, putting a stumbling block for a blind person, it's Isur Kloli. But I want to say the background behind this. The same Ha'ara is printed in Chelik Lamed Tes, page 184, on the Biurim of Igeres HaTshuva in the Hisofis of that Chelik. And there it says at the end of this order, it says, This comes from a letter. And this is what happened. This whole thing was written in a letter by the Rebbe once. Tovshin Chavtes, when the Rebbe every Shabbos spoke on Geras HaTshuva, many of the Sichas, the Rebbe was Magia, and that they were printed in Kuntreisim called Biurim Geras HaTshuva. So in Peirik Beis of Geras HaTshuva, the Rebbe spoke and it came to talk about this inyan. So when they gave the Rebbe the Sicha to be Magia, so since this is a letter from the Rebbe that has to do with that inyan, that this was added as a ha'ara because this is connected to that inyan and the Rebbe had written about this. But in that letter that the Rebbe wrote, it didn't say the opposite. It just said the first way. It didn't say the Yashleimer L'Heipach. But when this order was given into the Rebbe as a hemshech to the Sicha, the question was asked to the Rebbe, why can't you say the opposite? And it was explained to the Rebbe that there's a svara that you could say the opposite. So the Rebbe, what he did was, he said, okay, you could put that in too. And he put it into brackets, and that's put into brackets. That's when it came in. The original letter, it didn't say that. And it came in later on, when the question was asked to the Rebbe, why you can't say this? He says, yes, okay, you could say that too if you want to, basically. But it's left in brackets. So in other words, the real pshat, the way the Rebbe had lechatchila, and this is the way Iker is, that it's the other way. And when you say leheipach, that's something that the Rebbe said, okay, there's a svara to say that too. He accepted the svara and he left it in brackets. And this is how it was printed in the Kuntreisim of Biurim L'Geras HaTshuva, then Tovshin Chavtes. Then this sicha from the Biurim L'Geras HaTshuva went to the Sefer of Lekutei Biurim of Rebbe Shia Korf on Tanya. The second chelik was a copy of all the Mugadik, even not Mugadik sichas of the Rebbe and the Geras HaTshuva. So it went in, and there it said already, V'yashlema gam l'heipach, because when the Rebbe was Magia, the sichas to Geras HaTshuva, that's what it was added. From there, it came to the Lekutei Sichas Chelik Yud Aleph that I started with, because that ha'ora that's there was taken from the Biurim L'Geras HaTshuva. But since it's the same minyan, so the ha'ora was added here too. And then later on, when Chelik Lamed Tes was printed and they added in the Hisof as the Biurim L'Geras HaTshuva, so it went in there too, the same thing, the way it was originally printed in the Biurim L'Geras HaTshuva. That's why here it says in Chelik Lamed Tes, it adds Mimichtav Kvei Kedusha Ad Morshlita, because that's what it said in the Biurim L'Geras HaTshuva. When it was put into Chelik Yud Aleph, It doesn't say Memichtav, but it's put in as a order, and it's connected mamish to that inyan, and the Rebbe was Magian, and the Rebbe left it in there, because this is the Rebbe's letter, but it didn't say Michtav Elish Admor Shlita, but in the Biurim it did say, so therefore, when they reprinted the Biurim Ageras Atshuva, and they saw it's a Chelik Lametes, it stayed with the words Memichtav Elish Admor Shlita. In the Farbrengen of Yom Simchas Torah Tovshin Lamed, the Rebbe spoke many inyonim which are very fundamental, and many practical inyonim. For instance, that's the Farbrengen where the Rebbe explained why we don't sleep in the Sukkah, al pi nigla, al pi chsidis. That was Mugi and printed in Likutei Sichos, Chelik Chavtes, Chag HaSukkos. That's the Farbrengen that the Rebbe explained al pi nigla and al pi chsidis why Chabad doesn't have no Sukkah. But then I want to mention a few other things that the Rebbe spoke about in that Farbrengen. In the beginning of the Farbrengen, the Rebbe mentioned what the Frierdiker Rebbe said in a Farbrengen of Simchas Torah Tovshin Hey, 25 years before this Farbrengen, which is Tovshin Lamed. And the Frierdiker Rebbe said like this: I know that amongst you there are people who are laughing at me. He meant to say laughing at the fact that the Frierdiker Rebbe said that he wants to make America, Mokim Torah, etc., etc. So he said, I know there are some people amongst you who are laughing at me. How is it possible that here in America, someone is walking in the street, you should be able to recognize on him that he's a Yid, he's a Ben Torah. And even those who are not laughing Begola, he said, but in their heart they're laughing at me and wondering how that's possible. But I hope, he said, so maybe that in short, very shortly, we'll be able to recognize in the street that a Ben Torah is walking. And now they're gonna laugh mitech simcha, out of joy. And the Rebbe said, Lapel, we see that this became a kuyim. We see there people walk in the street with covered heads with yarmulkes. And the main thing is that they go with tzitzis out. Was before Me'ever Yam, across the ocean, in the old country, that this didn't happen. And we're talking about Yidden that are Yerushalayim, true Yerushalayim. But because they lived amongst Goyim, this didn't happen. And now even the kid walks with his tzitzis out, and that's what the pshit is. And this meaning is getting more and more, that more people are doing this. And the Rebbe connected it that this is one of the nimusim, of the customs in America. In America, they care a lot about publicity. The end of tzitzis is publicity. It's to publicize that you have the seal of your master upon you, of the Eibishter upon you. So it fits to following what we do in America. And the Rebbe connected it to the fact that it says, if you come to a place, you have to follow the custom of the place. Now, it doesn't mean to chas v'sholom follow the things which are not good. It only means to follow the customs that are good. So this is one of the customs in America which is good, that is good, they're following, that they're publicizing their Yiddishkeit in the street, and they're wearing the tzitzis out. And the Rebbe mentioned that this was not done in the old country. There were even some G'dayla Torah that did not, because they lived amongst Goyim, they did not do it. And in America, here it's different. And the Rebbe connected this to the fact that the Frierdiker Rebbe said America is nicht anders. And the Rebbe explained that when you say America is nicht anders, America is not different, you're obviously saying that there's a possibility to think it is different. So since there is a possibility to think, so we do have to say that in some way it is, America is different. Especially the Rebbe said, Sheker ein li raglayim, if it's completely false, it's completely a lie, it will never exist. And since there is such a thing that people think that America is different, obviously there is some truth to it. So we do have to take certain things in consideration, that America is different and we have to follow America. So the Rebbe said, here we see that you have to know that America is different in good things, that anything that's good, that's in America, we have to follow that. So this is one of the nyonim, that people wear the tzitzis out is something that we should, what we follow, and that falls in the category that America is different because this is something good. And I just want to mention that B'negei the tzitzis, whether it should be out or not, there's a long arichas hasicha in Chelik Lamed Gimel Likutei Sichos, Parshas Korach. There the Rebbe talks about that some people have a meaning not to wear the tzitzis out, and that's based on Kabbalah, based on the Arizal, because it says the Arizal wore the tzitzis in, and there are some people who follow that. Basically, the shaila is, do you have to wear your talis cotton over your begodim, over your clothes or under your clothes? So they're different minhagim. There's a difference between al-nigl and al-pi-kabbalah. Al-pi-kabbalah, it seems you should wear it under the clothing. But it seems that the Arizal didn't only wear the talis cotton under the clothing, he also wear the tzitzis in. So the Rebbe explains arichas al-pi-chsidis, al-pi-kabbalah, al-pi-nigl, the both sides, and it comes out that the great people who are similar to the Arizal are able to wear it in, but most people who are not like that should wear the tzitzis out. So we see the Rebbe there gives credit a lot to wearing the tzitzis out. He did say that some people, and amongst Siddur Chabad, some people wear the tzitzis in, but that's only for some people. For most people, not. They say that the Rebbe's father wore his tzitzis inside, did not do it to wear the tzitzis out. And I think they say that the Rebbe also did that. But so the Rebbe says in the Sikha, B'Negeyad, those that wear it in, because it's something special that Arizal did for himself, and some people who are in that level are able to do it. Most people wear the tzitzis out. And it fits to this Sikha where the Rebbe said, Simchas Torah, Tov Shin Lamed, the Maila of wearing the tzitzis out. And that's one of the Mailas in America that they do, which fits in the category that in this Inyan, America is Andersh, America is different. Another thing that the Rebbe said in that Farbrengen of Yom Simchas Torah Tov Shin Lamed, behemshech to what he said, where it says, Olas Lakarta, Azil ben Nimusim, which means when you come to a city, you should follow the Nimusim, the customs of that city, in the good way. So the Rebbe said that in America, the Seder is that there is a gap between parents and children. I don't know if he used that word, but that was the Teichen, that the parents and children are two different worlds. And he used the Lashon of the Gemara in Sichta Seita, where it says that in the time before Mashiach will be that a daughter will stand up against her mother and the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, etc., etc. So we see that in America. So he says, the Rebbe said that this could be used for the good, that the children, the daughters and the daughters of the children are more frum than the parents, and they are the ones that will convince the parents to become better. Like it says, the Pasuk says, V'heishav li'vavis albanim, which means that the children will return the hearts of the parents to Hashem. And this is something that we see in America more than we see in other places before. So this is one of the things that America is Andesh, that in America you could follow the custom of America that way. Then the Rebbe also said that in America the custom is that sometimes, special times, when there is an initial simcha, so then they give double ration. That means you give a double portion. So the Rebbe said, because of that, since there is a gzeire that not to drink more than 4 cups l'chaim, but in order to bring out, make a better mood and bring out, there should be greater simcha, so there'll be a double ration that in this Farbrengen you could take 8 cups of mashke. And the Rebbe said there should be in the form of simcha peiritz geder, and that's what the Rebbe says why he's taking off the gzeira and making it you're allowed to take, instead of 4, you're allowed to take 8. But Mashiach didn't come yet, so we should only take 8 and not more. There's still a hagbole. The Rebbe went on to explain the union of double, bring rayas from Torah, the mile of being double. But this is what the Rebbe did here, behemshech to the idea of alas lakarta, azal ben Musa. When you come to a city, you have to follow the customs of the city, which is one of the ways that America is Andesh. And then there's something else that the Rebbe spoke, behemshech to this, in that same Farbrengen, which is also very practical, and that is going to be in the next voice note. In that same Farbrengen of Yom Simchas Torah Tov Shin Lamed, the Rebbe spoke something very practical and in very simple terms, down-to-earth terms. The Rebbe said that, since we mentioned before that there's a good thing that if the children will have a hashpoah, an influence on the parents, because of Heishav Leivavis Albonim, and in America that fits because the children do things different than the parents, that they could influence the parents. So the Rebbe wants to mention something else that he wants, that the children should have an influence on the parents. That the parents should also be dressed, mothers should also be dressed in tznius clothes. Not like this great pirza that became in the union of tznius. We can't even imagine what we're talking about here. That even older women do it. And the Rebbe said, I don't mean the older women that are mentioned in the Rashba, that if something that there's a minig of noshim skenitz is something very special. We're talking about poshet, something that the older women do, that they also don't wear tznius. And the eitzeh, in order to be successful, to influence them, has to come from the young girls, the Rebbe said. And therefore we have to explain to the young girls why it's no good, and explain it in a way that they will understand it also with their logic, and then they'll become tznius, and then they'll also have an influence on the parents. And this is what the Rebbe said you have to explain to them. That if a girl doesn't wear tznius and she wears a short skirt, you know what it means? That she thinks of herself that there's no other way that she could attract the attention of a bocher, not with her seichel, because she obviously doesn't have seichel, not with the feeling of the heart, because she obviously doesn't have it, not with any milas. And b'chlal, she's not a person. The only way she could attract the bocher is by uncovering a place which has to be covered. But this shows how low she thinks of herself. She's as if carrying a sign saying that I don't have seichel, I don't have feeling, I don't have any milas, I don't have anything, even my face is ugly. The only mile I have is that I'm uncovering a place which should be covered. And that's going to entice the bocher. And then he'll want to talk to me and he'll say hello to me. That's a great shiftless. That it shows only pritzus and no other milas. And this she's saying it in the public. And she's showing it to everybody that she has no milas. And it says in the pasuk that the fool is proud, prides himself with his foolishness, with his stupidity. And that's what she's showing. Now we know there's a psak din in Torah that Bnei Yisrael, Yafeh saying all Jewish girls are beautiful, but some it's begilui, some it's not begilui, and you have to bring it out, the beauty, but not through bringing pritzes. And when we'll explain this to the girls, it'll make it easier for them, make the nesoin easier for them. And in this, they will see that America is nicht anders. They're just like in the old country before. People were tzniazdik, so America is not different, it should also be tzniazdik. And he says the reason that the girls do it is because the mothers do it. The mothers want them to do it. Because the mother doesn't want the daughters to wear long skirts. So she shouldn't look like she's an older person. She'll look like a Rebbetzin. And if she looks like a Rebbetzin, that makes the mother look even older. So they'll think the mother is 70 years old. And who wants to look that 70, even if she's 80, the Rebbe said. Who wants to look 70 years old? So the eight is, the mother thinks is, how's she going to make herself look younger? She'll cut the dress of the daughter. So then it'll show that the daughter is young, but B'meila she's also young. So B'meila, even the Baba, even the grandmother, who's 90 years old, will also make herself look as if she's under Bas Mitzvah. The Rebbe made it sarcastically. So we have to use the strength of the youth in America, that the youth have their strength for good things, to explain this to the youth, to the young girls, and B'meila, they will have an influence on their mothers, that the children will have an influence on the mothers. Now this was very strange, because the Rebbe said it by the Fabrengen, because the Rebbe by Fabrengen with Chassidim Simchas should speak so outright, such very clear things. So it was a little bit strange. So what I heard was that B'chlal Mental Futterfas would come for every Tishri to the Rebbe. This Fabrengen he missed because he was sick laying in bed, he couldn't come to the Fabrengen. After the Fabrengen, when the people, his relatives, came home where he was, he first thing asked, what did the Rebbe speak about the Fabrengen? So they told him what the Rebbe spoke about, and they mentioned this whole Inyan too, that the Rebbe spoke about very simple and very down-to-earth terms, which seems a little bit strange for a Rebbe to speak like that about short skirts and dresses, and that she's not beautiful, all these things. So the Mendel Futterfas, when he heard it, he said, oh, now I understand that Zalman Moshe was right. Zalman Moshe was a big chassid, a big mashpia, but we know that when he used to fabrengen, he used to use words which were not so appropriate, and people had kindness to him. And Reb Mendel Futterfas was a Talmud Muvik, a mushpa from Reb Zalman Moshe. When they asked Reb Zalman Moshe why he does it, so he said, the Nefesh HaBahamis doesn't understand any other language. When you want to talk to a person and explain something, it should reach him really, really into his Yetzer Hara, into his Nefesh HaBahamis, you got to speak his language. So that's why he said he spoke that language. So Reb Mendel Futterfas said that he sees from this that Reb Zalman Moshe was right. That's exactly what the Rebbe did. The Rebbe lowered himself and spoke the simple language down to earth, because that's the only way he could explain it to the Nefesh HaBahamis, which fits to what the Rebbe writes in the Sichas Chelik Yud, Parshas Noach. He writes that even though you have to speak Lashon Noki, and the Torah always tries to speak Lashon Noki in clean language, but if it's Negei L'Maisa, Lahaloch L'Maisa Posha, to say what to do, you have to be very clear. You can't just say words which are fancy. It has to be very, very clear. So in this case also, the Rebbe spoke very, very clear, something very, very specific. But Negei, short skirts, and how she shows that she has no brains, and she shows to her the world that there's no other way that she could have influenced or attract a bocher, etc. In very simple words, because to speak down to earth and that the Nefesh HaBahamis should understand and you should really take it seriously, you have to speak very clear, and that's what the Rebbe did in this Fabrengen. In Sefer HaMinhagim, page 8, it says that the oval, b'meshech Yud Aleph Chedesh, an oval throughout the 11 months that he davens for Omed, Chen Baal Yortzeit, also a person who davens for Omed when he has Yortzeit, Madlikin Chamisha Neides B'Shas Atfilah, you light 5 candles when he davens. And in the Ha'ara it says, taken from the Friedrich Rebbe Sichas, that it's the 5 are Keneged, Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chai, Yechide, the 5 parts of the Neshama. And then it says that from here we could learn out, so too concerning the electric menorah, that's always there in front of the Omed, it should have 5 lamps. And then it says that this is a Heroah from the Rebbe. Now I don't know exactly when the Heroah came, What I could say is that upstairs in 770, for years in the Yuds and then in the beginning of the Chofs, the menorah that was there in front of the Amid had 6 branches. But one branch was separate from the other, or was someone like pushed it away. So you had in a straight line the 5 lamps, and then the 6th one was pushed away to the side. In other words, this was the original lamp that was there, and it had 6 bulbs. So when this Heiroah from the Rebbe came, and I don't know when, that they should only have 5, then what they did was they pushed it away, the 6th one, and that 6th one was not in the same line, and that one wasn't lit. So when you put on this menorah, only 5 of the lamps went on, and the 6th one didn't go on. And that's how it was there for many years, till they changed it, and they got a new menorah, and when they got the new menorah, then the Lechatchila only was made with 5. But many, many years, the menorah there was 6, and you could see that there was something done to it, so the 6th one shouldn't be part of it, even though it was there. They didn't break it off, it was there, but it was pushed away, and what was lit always was only the 5. There was a person who became a Lubavitcher Chassid, and in the neighborhood that he lived, there were certain people who made him problems because of him becoming a Lubavitcher. And he couldn't take it anymore. So he told me, he wrote to the Rebbe, that they're doing all kinds of problems. They're making all kinds of tzaras. And he wrote to the Rebbe saying that even though each thing separately they do is not the most terrible thing, the worst thing, but so many things that they do that they all add up to big tzaras. And he used the term that the Gemara uses concerning tzedakah. It says that kol pruto mitztarefesh l'cheshbon gadol. At every pruta, so to speak, every penny, so they all add up to one big cheshbon. So he used that lashon here too, that all the tzaras that they do to him, the different individual tzaras they do to him, add up and they make a big tzara, and he doesn't know what to do. So he says that the Rebbe answered him that we cannot apply the concept of kol pruta mitzarefes l'cheshbon gadol in this inyan, because this shows the inyan of achdus, that all little things join together, achdus, and they make up a big cheshbon. But that's only done by kedusha. In Yonif and Klippe, there is no achdus. We know by Klippe there is no achdus. And therefore, each one is considered an individual separate thing, and you can't look at them as they all join together. So he said to me, you see, by the Rebbe, everything had to do with Torah. And since Al Pi Torah, they don't join together, so the Rebbe looked at it and he said, so don't take it all as one big tzara, that each one separate, and separately they're not such big tzaras, and therefore it's easier to take. Sometimes when the Rebbe would speak by Farbrengen something very sharp against somebody, when it came to write the Hanochas, to write it down, some parts would be skipped if it would be too sharp against the person. So I want to give a small example from the Sicha of Shabbos Parshas Va'era Tovshin Lamed Beis. There the Rebbe spoke about Mi Yehudi, the law where it says that in Eretz Yisrael, who's considered a Yid, somebody who has a Jewish mother, and who was Nizgayer. And they used to say the word Nizgayer Ke'aloche, but they took it out, and that's what the whole Shturim the Rebbe made. And there was a psak din from the Rabbanos Haroshis that the members of the cabinet, the Fruma members, should resign if this is not fixed. So the Rebbe told over that there was a meeting of 25 to 30 people, and one guy from the Tzaddik Neged Rebbe said, from the other side, got up and said there was no such psak din of the Rabbanos Haroshis. And the Rebbe said there was somebody should have answered him. Somebody who was there who could have answered him did not answer him. And the Rebbe complained that it shows that he didn't have the courage to do it. And then the Rebbe continued, I asked that person, when you heard such things, why didn't you answer them? So he said, I didn't know myself that there was such a psak din for Rabbanos Haroshis. So the Rebbe said, how could it be that you didn't know? We spoke about it of Habrengen Beferish. You were there. And then the Rebbe said, we chazer it over many, many, many times. And it was publicized and printed, made a whole shturim, a whole tumul about it. Letters were sent out about it. How could you say that you didn't know about it? You were there. And then in the Hanocha that's printed in Sichas Kodesh, it says Choser Ktsaz, that there's a piece missing here, and then it continues that the reason why you didn't answer because you have the weakness and you don't have the courage to do it. But really, when it says Choser Ktsaz, there was a piece missing because the Rebbe said a few words, and at that time people knew who it was. That's why we took it out. And the Rebbe said, when he said, but you were there, what do you mean you didn't know about it? So the Rebbe said these words. But the reason why you didn't know about it, because by the Farbrengen, you don't listen to what is being said. All you're doing is looking around to see which other people are sleeping. And if you see someone sleeping, you don't let them sleep. In the meantime, you'll be missing parts of the Farbrengen. So you rely on Chazorah, the Rebbe said. or he has more important things to do. And then the Rebbe continued about the union that you didn't have the breitkeit. But here the Rebbe spoke very sharp against the person saying that you don't listen to the Farbrengen, you're involved in other things. And that is taken out as a hashmote. But the Rebbe did say these sharp words by this Farbrengen on Shabbos Parshas Va'era Tovshin Lamed Beis. In the Farbrengen of Shabbos Parshas Vayeshev Tovshin Lamed Aleph, the Rebbe spoke about me Yehudi, like he did in all the Farbrengens in those years. And the Rebbe said that people make a lot of asifas about all kinds of things, but they don't talk about the special problem of me Yehudi. And the Rebbe tells that he asked somebody who was by one of those asifas, how come you speak about everything else? You don't speak about this. So the person answered him, it's not popular. Also, he said that this is not something that you can do anything about it. He tells the Rebbe that you speak about it and nothing happened. So there is no reason to speak about it. So the Rebbe said to him, but it says that you have to rebuke your friend, and the Gemara says, I feel a me'apomim even 100 times. So even if it didn't help the first time, you go 100 times. You got to go on and on and on. And the Rebbe continues there in the Sikha, the way it's written in the Hanoche, in Sichas Kodesh and in Teiros Menachem. It says there that the Rebbe said, and I spoke about it many times, and they even wrote down the words, and with that it's finished. And the Rebbe said, why did I speak about it? In order to do, even 100 times. But if you look in the Hanocha, the way it's written there, in middle here, there are two words, choser katsas. That means that there is a piece missing in the middle that was taken out. So I want to fill in the few lines that are missing in the Hanocha over there. This is what the Rebbe said. I spoke about this many times, and it was even written. And in the Rishimas that they wrote of the Farbrengen, which means the Anochas of the Farbrengen, they even wrote the Raya that I brought, why you have to speak about it as many times as possible, because of and it's like you know that's like a good Raya. And then what happened afterwards, you take what I said and you send it out all over the world. And there are even people who are mesuder amongst you, that they bind it in a sefer, and they're happy that now they have another page of a siche. Another page of what the Rebbe said. And they even would write on it that this is from Tovshin Lamed, and then they would put it away on the shelf, that everyone should see it. And then there are even those who have a good zikhron and they even remember when I said it, but that's where it stays, and by that it stops. But the reason I spoke about it is that it should fulfill the These are the words that are missing there that did not go into the Hanocha. We heard stories that if somebody was not feeling well, the Rebbe felt that he should come to the Farbrengen rather than not come because of that. But these are stories that we hear. But I just want to say one that I know personally that happened. This was when my cousin Rav Leibel Shapiro was still young bocher. This was the bin Tovshin Chav Daled, and he was sick and not feeling well. And it came to Farbrengen. I don't know if Sukkis or Simchas Torah, that he wasn't there. So his grandfather, the Peretz Mochkin, came over to the Rebbe. I don't know if it's by Koshel Brocha in the middle of the Farbrengen, and they mentioned that he's not feeling well. So the Rebbe said, "Wo is er?" So he said he's home because he's sick. He's not feeling well. So the Rebbe said, "Hat erg gedaf kommen." So now that he's not feeling, so certainly he should have come to the Farbrengen. So I heard this for the Peretz Mochkin himself. But I heard that there are many, many other times that the Rebbe said this. But this was the idea that to come to the Farbrengen would have been a refuah if you come. That's what came out from the Rebbe. I would like to repeat a few things that are missing in the Hanoche from the Farbrengen of Shabbos Parshas Vayigash Tovshin Chav Tes. Actually, before Shabbos, the Rebbe said there won't be a Farbrengen. But L'Peil Mamash, it came Shabbos, there was a Farbrengen. And the Rebbe spoke about it. He said that even though he said there won't be a Farbrengen, but the reason he did is Farbrengen is because of a Dover Chodesh, because something new that happened. And the way he explained in the Farbrengen is because Mamish, close to Shabbos, they reached close to the moon. And the Rebbe said that everything that we see in the world, we have to take a lesson in Avodas Hashem. So he wanted to tell us the lesson in Avodas Hashem from that. Also, there was some radio program that happened, and the Rebbe wanted to talk about that. But before that, he said the simple Dover Chodesh, what was there that he did Farbrengen because something new that happened, is because they wrote into the Rebbe a letter asking him to Farbrengen with kindness. And he said that the people who wrote the letter are really not shayches to come with the taine. But there's always a kluginker, some smart aleck, that he put them up to it and asked them to write in with tinus. They on their own would not write it. And he asked them, put them up to it, that they should ask, have tinus. And the Rebbe used the lotion, kriechen in enge Nord, and to climb, stick to a very narrow place. In other words, to have tinus to the Rebbe with something that the Rebbe didn't want to do, you have to have the guts to it. And these are people who did it, but the people who wrote it they were not people of that kind. They would not have written it themselves, but with they untergestellt, somebody got them, and the Rebbe called him a kluginker that's ready to kriechen in enge Erter. Later in the Fabrengen, the second Siche, when it says in the Hanoche that explaining why, even though he said before there won't be a Fabrengen and Lepele change is not called a lie, and he quoted the Rambam, where the Rambam says that if it's a change for the good, it's not called really a change, etc., etc. But really the way he started the Siche was with these words: there will be those who will come with tinus. That I said there won't be a Fabrengen, and Lepel there was. And then he added that there are always people who have tinus. And therefore, in order to answer those tinus, I'm going to explain with the Rambam and explain the whole thing, and that's not called changing the mind, because for the good, even the Eibishter, if he says something bad will happen, he changes for the good, that's not called changing his mind. Same thing here, the fact that he changed for the better to make a Fabrengen is not called changing the mind. But he started the Sikha by saying that there will be people who will have tinus, because tinus felt kemolish. There is never missing people who is going to have tinus. There's a certain expression that the Rebbe said by Fabrengen, which I think is a very important one, but I don't remember which Fabrengen he said it, and I never saw it in print. I don't remember seeing it in any Hanoche. I don't remember seeing it in the Siches, but later you see in a Raya. The fact I didn't see it, or I don't remember seeing it, is no Raya that it's not there, but I don't remember, but it's a very important expression. The Rebbe said these words: Teire is l'mayla min ha-seichel. Teire is aber nit hepech ha-seichel. Teire is higher than seichel, but Teire is not against seichel. Which I think it means Teire will never say that 1 and 1 equals 3. It's hepech ha-seichel. Which means also l'chore that if they should find someplace in the Teire where it says 1 and 1 equals 3, it must mean something else. It must mean something deeper, but not kipshute, because the Teire would not write something that's hepech ha-seichel. I'll give another example, which I think would be a good example. The Pasuk says that why was Chava called Chava? Because she was Eim Kol Chai. She was the mother of all living things. Now, what does that mean? She was the mother of all living things? She wasn't the mother of all living things, the mother of all the dogs. She was the mother only of all human beings. But the Pasuk says Eim Kol Chai. If it would mean literally, then it would be Hepech HaSeichel. You can't say that. So obviously that's not what the Torah means. So the Torah must mean all living human beings, not all living things, even though it says Ein Kol Chai, everything that's alive. So from there we have to know that whenever we talk about the Torah would tell us things which are higher than Seichel, we can't understand, but Torah would not say things which are against Seichel. That's the Lashon the Rebbe used. Torah is l'mayla min ha-seichel, aber nicht hepech ha-seichel. And I would like to find that word the Rebbe said, when the Rebbe said it, to see behemshech to what it is, and maybe we could get more information about it, but this is what I remember the Rebbe said. It's well known that if a bocher from yeshiva would ask the Rebbe a question that has to do with yeshiva in Yonim, the Rebbe would not answer, and he would always send to Tanholas HaYeshiva. There are tens, probably hundreds of times that the Rebbe wrote Kimafursim, that this is Katzas Tanholas HaYeshiva, or Stam Katzas Tanholas HaYeshiva. He even said it, but he wrote it many times, hundreds of times for sure. Once, one of the bochrim in yeshiva here by Yosef Miami spoke to me about a certain decision he had to make, which had to do with yeshiva in Yoni, but it was a very, very important decision that he had to make. And he spoke to me about it because the Rebbe would always say, Katzas Tanholas HaYeshiva. But this was a question that it was very hard to come to a decision because it was very major, very important, and I didn't know really what to say. So I told him, this is a question you have to ask the Rebbe. But I told him, I know that the Rebbe will answer Katzas Tanholas HaYeshiva. That's Rebbe always sends to Anhola. Therefore, I think you should write to the Rebbe that you spoke to the Anhola, and the Anhola said that in a question like this, it's the only one that could answer is the Rebbe. And therefore, the Anhola suggested that you ask the Rebbe, and therefore you're asking the Rebbe. So I thought if he writes like that, then how could the Rebbe go to the Anhola when the Anhola's answer was go to speak to the Rebbe? So the Bocha wrote like that to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe answered, Katzas Tanholas HaYeshiva. He disregarded the fact that he asked already and they sent him to Rebbe. The Rebbe said, Katzas Anholas Yeshiva, you go back to the Anholas Yeshiva, and because the Rebbe, so to speak, wanted that in all these questions, the Anholas should be the one to answer. And he came back to us, and we looked into it, and we gave an answer, and Baruch Hashem, it worked out. But I want to show that if the Rebbe wanted it should go through the Anhola, nothing helped, even though he wrote this way that he spoke to Anhola, and the Anhola said, go ask the Rebbe nevertheless sent it back, and he said, Katzas Anholas Yeshiva. The Kuta Sichas Chelik Ches and the Heisofis, the Sicha to Chag HaShavuos, so there is printed a synopsis of the Farbrengen of the second day of Shavuos, Tovshin Lamed Beis. And this was a Techen Kotzer. Tovshin Lamed Beis, the Rebbe wasn't Magia, a liquid for Likud Sichas. So we asked the Rebbe if he would, after Yidalef Nissen, if he would Magia a Techen Kotzer, a synopsis of the Farbrengens after every Farbrengen. The Rebbe agreed, and Itaka did, was Magia Techen Kotzer after many of the Farbrengens of that year, from there till the Sichas started coming out again, Tovshin Lamed Gimel, and including Shavuos. And the Rebbe was Magia only once, not like the Likud for Likud Sichas, where it was Magia twice. After it was Magia and it was typeset, we gave it in again. But this one, the Rebbe was Magia only once. So here we have a strange thing. On page 252, it says in Medrash that Holach HaKadosh Baruch Hu Mahalach Tov Kuf Shona Liknis Lishem. Hashem went a shetach, a space of, would take 500 years to go normally to acquire a name, the Koya al Matan Torah, and that goes on Matan Torah because Torah is the names of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And it says a Maramokim where the Medrash is, that's number 31. Then it says number 33, a Maramokim, that the Torah are all names of Hashem. But on this where it says that that Hashem went, a Mahalach of Tov Kuf Shono, Liknas Hashem goes on Matan Torah, there's a number 32. But on the bottom, in the Ha'oras, it's missing the Ha'orah. In the first prints, the number was written, but it was empty. Later on, they took out the whole number from the bottom. But in the Pnim, it says 32, that this goes on Matan Torah, number 32, and there's no Maramokim at the bottom. And I know that people are learning Pshat, what's the Pshat, all kinds of inyanim. So I just want to say that, sometimes things come just from the Batlonis. This came when the Rebbe was Magia de Sicher, and this inyan that it goes on Matan Torah, the Rebbe wrote, Re'ei Diber HaMaschel, look, in the Maimer that starts, and he didn't write which Maimer, as the Rebbe did many times, that when he needed a simple Maramokim, he wouldn't write it, he would leave it for the people who gave him the Sicher to write it. Because we understand that the Rebbe would not write a Maramokim unless he would check it out. So therefore, sometimes when he would write a Maramokim, whatever, it's a Gemara or something else, he would check it up, have to get up from his chair and go and check it up to make sure, or he would write it, and then write on the side, please check it up that this is it. And the same thing I believe with my Morim, but he would write. So instead of the Rebbe writing which Maimer it is, or which my Morim it's written in, the Rebbe just wrote Rei Dibra Maschel and left it empty to be filled in. So we were taking it to fill it in, but in the meantime, not to waste time, we gave the whole Sicha to the printer to typeset, thinking that we'll leave this empty, but when it comes out, we'll fill it in later. And because of a Batlonis, Poshet, it was forgotten to put in that Maramokim, and that's how it stayed, and that's how it stayed the whole time. And Baruch Hashem, now, when Vad Hanochas Lahak gave out the whole Farbrengen of the Shavuos Tovshin Lamed Beis, they actually filled it in, and they have the Maramokimus for which Mamorim this says that this Maimer Chazal, that Holach HaKadosh Baruch Hu Mahalak Tak Shona Likli Shem goes on Matan Torah. So they filled it in, and that filled in what was missing here in Order 32 in Likud Sichos. I'd like to tell over a story about the Rebbe Rashab that's not so well known, but the Rebbe said the story, Shabbos Parshas Amid B'Tovshin Chavdalet. That Farbrengen, the Rebbe was speaking about the inyan of Malchus, that you can't be a Melech unless there are people who accept you as a Melech. And the Rebbe told a story that the Friedrich Rebbe told over that once there was a person who wanted to become a Rebbe in a certain area. And if I remember correctly, from what the Rebbe said then, even though it's not in the Hanoche, that there was a Rebbe who passed away, left over a son who was not fit to be a Rebbe, but he wanted to be a Rebbe. But the Chassidim didn't accept him. So when he heard that the Rebbe Rashab is in the area where he was, he came to the Rebbe Rashab and wanted from him a haskama, a smicha, that he could be a Rebbe, or that he's a Rebbe. But said the Mishgepast, he didn't fit that he should outright ask for that. So he wanted to ask b'derech remes. So he came to the Rebbe Rashab and he said that the Baal HaCholim, in a dream he had, that he is a Rebbe, that he should be a Rebbe. And the way I remember, I'm not sure, that he said that his father came to him in this dream and he told him that you should be the Rebbe. So he told this over to the Rebbe Rashab, hoping that the Rebbe Rashab would give him haskama that it's true. So the Rebbe Rashab did not answer anything. So he came to him again, thinking that the Rebbe Rashab didn't get the remes, didn't understand what he meant. So he came to the Rebbe Rashab again, and again he ignored him, didn't answer him. He sees it's not helping, so he came a few times. The Rebbe Rashab saw that they can't and for them that you can't, get rid of him. So he told him like this, that next time when the Baal HaCholim comes to you, or the way I remember, he said, the next time your father comes to you in your dream, tell him he should come in the dream to the Chassidim. So the Rebbe brought out from this word that just a dogma that a melech, malchus cannot be unless the people are makabel you. You can't decide I'm a melech. But the story itself is an interesting story which teaches us that a person has to know anything that you have to do concerning somebody else. It has to be that the other person should accept it, but you can't just say that I feel that way and that's how it should be. What I'm going to say now about a dream that Rabbi Simpson had is well known, but I heard it from somebody who heard it from Rabbi Simpson himself. Tovshin Yud, the Rebbe refused to accept the Nesias, and people begged him. Amongst them was Rabbi Simpson also, and the Rebbe refused. So Rabbi Simpson had a dream then. In the dream he saw the Frierdiker Rebbe, and the Frierdiker Rebbe asked him, why is he sad? And he said, because the Istalkas of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and we have no Rebbe. So the Frierdiker Rebbe said, but I left him, and he meant the Rebbe. I don't know if he used the Rebbe's name, or he said the Ramash, or whichever Loshen, but he referred to the Rebbe. So Rabbi Simpson answered the Frierdiker Rebbe in his dream, but he doesn't want. So the Frierdiker Rebbe said, I will speak to him. And Rabbi Simpson told his dream to the Rebbe. But the Rebbe answered, but he didn't speak to me. And I think this coincides at the same time about something else that happened then. I heard from Rabbi Weinberg himself that when the Rebbe kept on saying that I didn't hear anything from the Shver, from the Frierdiker Rebbe about his accepting the Nesias, so a group of Anash, Elter Chassidim and Jungelite, went to the oil of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and they were mispalel, and they were asking the Frierdiker Rebbe to speak to the Rebbe about accepting the Nesias. And after this, Rabbi Weinberg told me, the Rebbe did not once mention this answer that the Shver didn't say anything to me. And I think these two things coincide together, that after this, the Frierdiker Rebbe probably did come to the Rebbe, whatever, we don't have any ideas what happened, but the Rebbe stopped saying that I didn't hear anything from the Shver, so obviously there was something there, and then actually started the whole thing moving, rolling, that the Rebbe, sof kosov, accepted in the Nesias in an official way. In the first years of the Rebbe's Nesias, Reb Shmuel Witten was once speaking to my father, and he told him that Bechlal, it's known by Chassidim from all generations, that the first year of a Rebbe's Nesias, he makes a lot of meifsim. So he said, so by the Rebbe also, the first year of his Nesias, there were a lot of meifsim. But he said to him, I want to tell you that by the Rebbe, there was a special hatzloche in meifsim the first year. That's the Lashon he used. There was a special hatzloche in meifsim by the Rebbe the first year of the Rebbe's Nesias. Another example of something the Rebbe said by a Fabrengen, but when it came to write the Hanoche, when it was printed, it was skipped. That is in the Fabrengen, Shabbos Parshas Va'era Tovshin Chov Ches. In the middle of the Rasha Siche, the Rebbe stopped and the Rebbe said that there are some people here who are afraid that I might look at them and I will ask him where something says. When I mention something from a place, and I might turn around to them and I would ask him where it says. And the problem is that they don't know where I'm holding, whether I'm holding in the beginning of the Siche or in the middle of the Siche, or we're almost finished with the Siche and we're going to sing a Nigen. And B'meila, they're afraid I might ask him. So the Rebbe seems, if I remember correctly, said that he's not going to do that because Metzaya Zayin Ayidin is Osir Afilu by B'neach. To make a Yidin have Tsar is Osir. It's even Osir by a B'neach, even by Goyim. You're not allowed to cause a person Tsar. So I certainly wouldn't do it. But then the Rebbe said that maybe I should speak with closed eyes. so I won't see this. And the reason would be not to be Metzayer Eden, so I would speak with closed eyes. So the Rebbe said, to speak with closed eyes is a hanhogim mezora. It's a strange way of doing things, but maybe that he's not going to do. But what the Rebbe was saying, it was Meir people, that people should pay attention and listen to what he says. In the Farbrengen of Shabbos Parshas Mishpotim, Tovshin Chav Tes, there are some words missing in the Hanocha. And I would like to repeat them. The Rebbe spoke on the Rashi in Kesef Talve Sami. But the Rebbe had spoken about this Rashi already 2 years earlier, Shabbos Parshas Mishpotim, Tovshin Chav Zayin. But the Rebbe said it was not enough time then, so he didn't explain the whole thing. Now the Rebbe asked more kashas. He asked the kasha from the Posik and B'chukei Setalech, etc. But then he said, it's 2 years already since I spoke about this Rashi. And there is the kasha from this posik, and there are kasha from other psukim also, but no one bothered to ask. At least the Rebbe said it didn't get to him. No one was mediya him that they asked his kashas, even though it's printed, so everybody could have looked it up and looked into it, and therefore would have looked into it and come up with these kashas, and no one did. But it's like the Bittel Rebbe writes that when some maimer or things are in ksav yad, they're handwritten, they're not printed, and it's not mugi, it's not even checked over completely. That when people will learn it. But when it gets printed and it's mugi and everything is checked over and everything is edited, then people put it away. They don't even look at that. Even though the sicha that I spoke is there, you could look at it, no one did it. And it's 2 years already that passed. So obviously 2 years is not even, 2 years even is not enough for people to look into something. And the Rebbe complained. And the Rebbe continued later with the kashas that he asked, but he complained why no one looked into it and no one asked the question for 2 years since he said it. I also want to mention something that the Rebbe said in the Farbrengen of Shabbos Parshas Tzav, Tovshin Chav Tes, which is not written in the Hanoche. The Rebbe mentioned there that it says in Tanakh, in Yeshua, that all 40 years when the Yidden were in the desert, they did not do bris milah, they didn't circumcise themselves. But when they went into Eretz Yisrael and they crossed the Yarden, they did circumcise themselves. And the Gemara says, this is in Yevamos Daf Ayin Aleph, the Gemara says that they crossed the Yarden on Yud Nisan, but that day they didn't get the bris, mishum chulsha d'urcha, because they were weak from the trip. So they got the bris milah afterwards. But it doesn't say which day. It's possible it was a few days later. Especially there's a svara to say to wait a few days, because you have to wait machmas tiltis al derech. If you come from a trip, you have to wait till you calm down. So there was a svara that you should wait. So it doesn't say exactly which day they did the bris milah. But the Rebbe said in Seder Eilam, and also in Rashi, in the Gemara there in Yevamos, and I think in the Gemara in Zvachim, the Rebbe didn't bring the Marmakim, but I'm saying I think that's where it is. There Rashi says, taken from Seder Eilam, clearly that the bris took place on Yud Aleph Nisan. And when the Rebbe mentioned that, he said, and that's the part that's not written in the Anocha, that Odom Korev Eitzel Atzmai, which means that the reason why he's making a note that it was Yud Aleph Nisan, because since the Rebbe's birthday, Yud Aleph Nisan, and Odom Korev Eitzel Atzmai, a person is close to himself, that's why he's making note of the fact that the bris milah that Eden did was Yud Aleph Nisan. Even though he didn't touch it so clearly, he just said Odom Korev Eitzel Atzmai, but obviously that's what he meant. Look at the Siches, Chelikut Beis, the first Sicha, the Parsha B'chukei, the Rebbe talks about Reb Meir, that sometimes when the Gemara quotes a memra, a statement in the name of Reb Meir, sometimes it says Reb Meir Eimer or Divrei Reb Meir, and sometimes it refers to Reb Meir as Acherim. And the Rebbe quotes Tosfos, where Tosfos says that those shmuas that he heard from Elisha ben Avua, who was called Acher, those statements that Reb Meir said, they called Reb Meir Acherim. But then the Rebbe explains that Reb Meir is called Acherim because this represents his Shitta Bichlal. And the Rebbe goes on that his Shitta is Kamos and Eichos, whatever, but the Rebbe goes on in explaining his Shitta. And then at the end the Rebbe says, and this explains the Pashtas, why sometimes it's called Reb Meir, sometimes Acherim, because in those memories, those halachas that he said that represent his general Shitta, and came after the story with Acher, there he's called Acherim, and otherwise it's called Reb Meir. In the Order 33, the Rebbe writes, you have to look into and figure out if you have to have both conditions. That it has to be a din which represents his general approach, general shita, and happened after the story of Acher, or one of the two is enough. And then the Rebbe writes, that was written by Hyman. There's a sefer called Tildes Anoim V'Ameroim that was written by a person called Hyman. So the Rebbe says, look there, and he says, Reb Meir niske b'shem Acherim, that there he quotes that Reb Meir is referred to as Acherim, And it says a whole list of places in Shas where Reb Meir is referred to as Acherim. I know there are some people who ask that there are more places where Reb Meir is referred to Acherim. So why does the Rebbe only quote these places here? So I just want to say how it happened. When the Rebbe was Magiya the Siche, he wrote those words, Sarichi and Nebirer, whether it has to be both conditions or not. And then the Rebbe wrote, Urei b'sefer tildis tanoim v'amaroim haiman, she'Reb Meir niske b'shem Acherim. And then he made a colon. That means, look into that sefer where he quotes where Reb Meir is called Acherim, and the Rebbe didn't quote all these places. He just left it empty for the people who wrote the Siche to fill in all the places that Hyman brings in that sefer where Reb Meir is called Acherim. So that's exactly what we did. We just copied everything he said because that's what the Rebbe said to do. Now, I don't know if the Rebbe meant that only in this places fits to what he says in the Siche, and the other places not, and it was meduyik that only these places should be brought, or since these are the ones that he brings, so the Rebbe said to copy what he brings, but maybe the other ones also, and this is the majority. I don't know exactly, but the way it was that the Rebbe did not actually write down all these places. The Rebbe just wrote, Re'ei, started this inyan, Re'ei, look what he writes, and left empty for us to fill in what he writes, and that's where these Manamakemas came. Now, whether the Rebbe was Medaik Dafka these or not, that I don't know, that everyone has to think themselves. I heard from Reb Hillel David Krinsky many things in his kesher to the Rebbe, especially when he started GEM, which started broadcasting the Rebbe's weekday Farbrengens on cable TV. So he had a chance a lot of times to go into the Rebbe with his father and himself to talk to the Rebbe about the different things. But I want to mention just one really small thing that he told me. That the Rebbe mentioned that he should start thinking of a shidduch. So he went out just a few times and he was ready to do the shidduch. And he went into the Rebbe and told the Rebbe that now he went out a few times and he's ready to do the shidduch. So the Rebbe said, Azei schnell, das ist nicht kein satellite. So fast, this is not a satellite that goes so fast. And the Rebbe wanted him to go out more, and then he would become a chosin. And that's exactly what happened. The Rebbe said a few times that sometimes you find in Chassidus that it explains al Chassidus an inyan that is not according to halacha or not according to our minig. Like Chassidus explains why we say Al Tira Abdi Yaakov Motzei Shabbos, even though our minig is not to say it. And the same thing with other things, because since it's a shita and every shita in Torah is Eilav Eilav Divrei L'Kim Chaim is true, therefore Chassidus explains that even though Lamaisa we don't follow that. And the same thing by the Rebbe. Sometimes when the Rebbe would mention certain things which is Negei La'alocha, sometimes it was only a Shakla V'Tarya discussion according to one shita, and it didn't mean Lamaisa that we have to do it. And I'll give an example of one of those cases is that in the Farbrengen of Chamisha Osar Ba'ov, Tovshin Mem Beis, the Rebbe spoke about saying the same Talamot Livrocha. That the meaning is that we say same Talamot Livrocha in the Baruch of Baruch Aleinu during winter, and summer we say the same Bracha. Because that's the season of the year that we need these things. That during this season we need the rain. So the Rebbe spoke about what about those countries which are on the bottom under the Kava Mashva, under the equator, that there the seasons is the opposite. When we uns is summer, by them is winter. When us is winter, by them is summer. What should they do there? So the Rebbe said there's svaras either way, that we should say it according to their season, they should say it according to their winter, they should say the same talamotar, and in their summer they should say the same bracha. But there's a svara differently, and it was seemingly from the Rebbe that he was nated, it seemed that he held that they should say according to their own seasons, which is not the way people do it there, Lepeil, but it seemed from the Rebbe that way. So the Farbrengen of Rosh Chodesh Elul, the Rebbe spoke about it, and he said that even though he said then that that's what it seems we should do, that's the Muskadish, and that's how it looks like in first glance, but Lepeil Mamish, they should not change. It didn't mean that they should change the meaning the way it is. And he went, the whole Aricha said, based on their Rosh, Shuvas HaRosh, they should not change, they should continue saying the way it was before. Because he only meant it lepilpula ba'alma, only for a pilpul, only for discussion of a shita, but not that that's what they should do. Then came to the Farbrengen of Rosh Chodesh Cheshvan Tovshin Mem Gimel. The Rebbe spoke about it again. Actually, the Rebbe said that he heard lately that people were saying that the Rebbe said to change when we say V'sein Talamota Levrocha. So he wants to know this was only a Shaklavataria, this is only explaining the Inyan, and he went again into whole Arichas why we should not change, they should do it the way the meaning is to do, even though it seemed from what he said L'chatchila that that's what we should do. And he even said at the end that it's kedai that when they print this Inyan, they should print all the Maramakemis with all the Svarim that deal with this. And in the Likud of Likutei Sichas for Vayeshev that year, Tovshin Mem Gimel, there was printed the whole Arichas, all the different Maramakemis of the different Svarim that deal with it. But the Rebbe said clearly again that he never meant that they should change, he meant that it was only L'shak Levataria. So we see from here that sometimes when the Rebbe said something which is Negei Lahalocha, he didn't mean that we should change. And therefore, every time it comes to something like this, we have to investigate to see, did the Rebbe mean that it's Negei Lahalocha Lamaise, or the Rebbe just spoke the Inyan according to that Shita, to that Svara. And I will continue in this line in the next voice note. I want to mention two things that I remember the Rebbe said, Fabrengen, Negei Yonei Halacha, and then we have to think, did he mean it Lahalocha Lamaise, or he just spoke that Shita, that Eifen? And both of them, I don't remember at which Fabrengen it was, but I remember clearly that he said it. One thing was, when the Rebbe spoke in the gay Dinyan of Leinitno Torah L'Malachi HaShoros, that the Torah was given to human beings, not to Malachim, and therefore he gave it in a way that we should be able to fill it in Derech HaTeva, and now to go beyond that. So he said then that therefore you don't have to take a magnifying glass and look for Teloyim. When it comes to check salad, lettuce, or things like that, you don't have to take a magnifying glass and look to see if there are worms there. You have to look at it, and if you don't see it with your regular eye, you don't have to take a magnifying glass, because Leinitn Teirel Machashoris. Now that's what he said, I remember clearly. I don't remember which Fabrengen, but I don't know if you meant the Halacha L'Maisa. Maybe he was just saying, this is the beer in the Shita that holds that way. Another thing he said once, when he spoke about the sort of carrying on Shabbos, and he mentioned that if it's derech malbush, then you're allowed to carry. So he said, and therefore you're allowed to wear glasses on Shabbos in the street, because it is derech malbush, since that's what everyone wears. I remember clearly he said it. I don't remember which Fabrengen. And again, I am not sure that he meant it lamaise, that he paskened that way, or he just was explaining the shita that holds that you're allowed to because of that. That's something that needs investigation. But I remember clearly that these are two things that the Rebbe said, which are Negei Lahalocha B'Shas Fabrengen. One of the very, very special, outstanding Fabrengens in the Chovs was Shabbos Parshas Bolok, Shivoser B'Tammuz Nitche. That means that day was Shivoser B'Tammuz, but it was pushed off. The Tanis, the fast day, was pushed off to the next day. Tovshin Chov Daled, which is 1964. Since it was Shivoser B'Tammuz, no one expected that there will be a Fabrengen. Bichlal, those years, Shabbos Fabrengens were only Shabbos Mevorchim or a special Yom Pagre. But Stamazei, a Shabbos, certainly a Shabbos which is really a Shivoser B'Tammuz Shabbos, no one expected the Fabrengen. So many, many people, most of the people probably left to the country. The Pel Mamesh, the Rebbe, after the davening, we realized that there'll be a Fabrengen. And the Rebbe came out to the Fabrengen at 1:30 like always. But this Fabrengen turned out to be a very, very special Fabrengen. In the beginning, the Rebbe spoke regular in Yonim like we'd speak a regular Fabrengen. But then, the Rebbe told over that in the time when the Frierdiker Rebbe was born, Tov Reish Mem, Yud Beis Tammuz, so that week, that year, Shivoser B'Tammuz, which was within the next few days after the Frierdiker Rebbe's birth, was also the Kviyas like that year, which is Shabbos. Shivoser B'Tammuz was Shabbos. And the Rebbe Marash, when he spoke, he said, quoted the Gemara, where the Gemara says that the Rebbe holds that in the year when Shivoser B'Tammuz comes on Shabbos, since you can't fast on Shabbos, so it's pushed away. So it's pushed away completely, and you don't have to fast at all that year. So the Rebbe Marash used this lotion that that means, in other words, even though we don't paskin like that, we do fast on Sunday, but the whole idea is that since it pushed away, let it be pushed away completely. That means that we shouldn't have to fast anymore on Shivoser B'Tammuz at all, that Mashiach should come and we shouldn't have the tonus of Shivoser B'Tammuz. And then, the Rebbe, when he said this, he said in order for this to happen, we have to prepare. So therefore, on a day like Shabbos, Shivoser B'Tammuz, which is a nitche, we should be more besimcha through yaina mesameach elekim v'anoshim, which says in the pasuk that wine makes happy the Eibishter and makes happy people. So therefore, people should drink more wine. And the Rebbe said that he's taking off the gzeira. We know that there's a gzeira that the Rebbe made that people under 40 are not allowed to drink more than 4 l'chaims. Chatchila, when the Rebbe made the gzeira, he said you're not allowed to drink more than 3. Later on, he changed to 4, but at this point, Shivosar Batamus Tov Shechabdala, it was still 3. So the Rebbe said that he takes off the gzeira of not being able to drink more than 3. So people were Tzei L'chaim. And then the Rebbe said that any bottle of mashke that's there should be emptied. And I think he used the lotion bottoms up. And when he looked around and he saw somebody holding a bottle, whether it was wine or mashke, that wasn't empty, he made with his hands and he showed, why is it not empty? You have to say l'chaim. The Rebbe himself said many times l'chaim, and the Rebbe specifically asked 3 people, a Kohen, a Levi, and a Yisrael, to say l'chaim. He asked the Kohen was Reb Chaim Gutnik, the Levi, I don't remember at the moment, I think somebody by the name of Levine, and the Yisrael was Reb Chanech Lichtenstein, told them to say l'chaim. But Bechlal, he turned around to everybody and they were singing a lot in the Gunim, and the Rebbe himself said a lot of l'chaim. It was a very, very freilich fabrengen, unusual freilich fabrengen. And the Rebbe felt like, so to speak, you could see close to the people. There was a small crowd, so the Rebbe could relate to everybody and made sure that people say a lot of l'chaim. I don't know from where some bottles of mashke became like this, how many bottles of mashke was there, but all of a sudden people started had bottles of mashke. Maybe they had it hidden someplace in the lockers in 770, I don't know. And when the Rebbe saw somebody with a bottle of mashke, so he said, why is a bottle of mashke not empty? Say l'chaim. And the Rebbe said a lot of l'chaim and became very big lufen. Now when it came 6 o'clock, be'erich 6 o'clock, the Rebbe took out his siddur, opened the siddur to say a brocha achreina, which that itself means it was very long, because in those years, a regular Shabbos Fabrengen, which started 1:30, continued till 3:30, 4 o'clock, sometimes 4:30. But 6 o'clock should be a long Fabrengen till 6 o'clock. That was unusual. So the Rebbe opened the Siddur to say a Brocha Achreina. L'Poel Mamish, the Fabrengen lasted for another hour till 7 o'clock. That means the Rebbe did not close the Siddur, but he didn't make a Brocha Achreina. He started talking other inyonim. He spoke about things of Parsha Pinchas, even though this was Parsha Bolog. But in those years, the Seder was that at the end of the Shabbos Fabrengen, which whatever Parsha it was, towards the end, the Rebbe would start off by saying that we're going by Mincha, we're going to read this and this next Parsha. So you would say some word on the next Parsha. So here also, he started speaking that since we're going to read Parshas Pinchas, so he spoke a whole arichas about Parshas Pinchas. The part that he spoke about was the inyonim of nachlas, of inheritance, that talks about in Parshas Pinchas, where it says that inheritance goes over to a son. If you have a son, then the nachla goes over lebite, and he explained what's the inyon of a bas, a daughter, and a son, all these inyonim. And the Fabrengen continued till 7 o'clock. And by 7 o'clock, that's when the Rebbe made the Brocha Achreina. But towards the end of the Fabrengen, the Rebbe said that even after he finishes Fabrengen, and then they dav mincha, etc., the Rebbe said that you still continue Fabreng. Chassidim should continue Fabreng. And he said, till when to continue Fabreng? He said the Fabreng should go on till Chatzos, till midnight. And he said why? Because the Alter Rebbe in his Siddur, by Sfira Sa'imer, the Alter Rebbe says that we know the din is that you can't count Sfira after Aleis HaShachar. You count at night, but when it gets in the morning, Aleis HaShachar, you can't count anymore. So the Alter Rebbe says that in the time of Sfira, B'Medina Selu, in the countries where he lived, or whatever the countries were, where he was, Aleis HaShachar, at the time of Sfira, it means after Pesach, between Pesach and Shavuos, is Chsos Lailo. Midnight is when there's already Aleis HaShachar. And the Alter Rebbe says it goes on like that till Shivosar B'Tammuz. And the Alter Rebbe says there that therefore Shivosar B'Tammuz, when it comes Chatzos Lailo, you have to stop eating. That means by a tonus like Shivosar B'Tammuz, you're allowed to eat at night, but you can't eat from Aleis HaShachar. So since Aleis HaShachar in those places is by Chatzos, so by Chatzos you have to stop eating. So the Rebbe said that since the Alter Rebbe says by Chatzos you have to stop, so you should fabring till Chatzos. And that's what people did. Like after Mincha, people continued Fabringing, then was Ma'ariv, and people went to Fabring. Bochrim went and Fabring. I remember we went to Chazorah, because usually the Seder Chazorah was the Shabbos, since summertime, the Fabring was over like 4 o'clock, let's say. So right after the Fabring was Chazorah. Wintertime, when the short days, the Farbrengen finished close to the Shkia, or it wasn't enough time to Chazorah. Chazorah was at night. This time, the Chazorah was at night because you couldn't have Chazorah right after Farbrengen because Farbrengen finished so late. So Chazorah was at night. So some Bochrim who usually would be by Chazorah weren't there. Why? Because they went someplace to Farbrengen. Because the Rebbe said to continue Farbrengen. Now remember, we were sitting by Chazorah, and when it came after Chatzos, a whole group of Bochrim came in singing Begiluf and Freilach because they Farbrengen till Chatzos. And now when Chatzos was there, they couldn't continue because the Rebbe said after Chatzos he shouldn't continue Farbrengen. So they came to Chazorah and they joined Chazorah. But all this was a hemshech to the Rebbe's Farbrengen, which was an outstanding Farbrengen, a Freilich Farbrengen, which we usually never saw that type of Farbrengen. And this is something that left a very big reishim on everybody. Now, I don't know, but negate this that the Rebbe said that you have to start fasting Shavuos B'Tammuz from Chatzos. And he said to Farbrengen Chatzos, I don't know if it means that nowadays in our countries, the Torah starts then. The Rebbe maybe just used this as a nekudah from where to how far to go. So I don't know L'gab Aloch of Sfira Seimer, that's something else. But L'gab the Farbrengen, the Rebbe said to Farbrengen till Chatzos, and that's what we did. But this Farbrengen left such a reishim, and anybody who wasn't there, and after Shabbos heard what kind of Farbrengen it was, felt so bad, because this is something that you can't make up. See, other Farbrengen, skip a Farbrengen, and every time you missed a Farbrengen, it was a bad thing. But still, this Farbrengen to miss was something that was outstanding, and therefore they felt so bad. And, in Yiddish there's a saying, was kleiner der Elam als größer de Simcha. The smaller the crowd, the bigger the Simcha. Here, I don't know if it fits to this. This is just a vertel, but Lepel, it was like that. A small crowd, and the Simcha, and the Rebbe that was there was mamish mededik, that it was like an union of pushing away the Torah. Since it's a nitche, the Rebbe made sure that there should be no union of atzvas, no union of sadness, but should be only simcha. And this Rebbe said would bring that heil v'nitche yitche. Since it was pushed away, it should be pushed away completely. Mashiach should come, and we shouldn't have to fast anymore on Shavuos B'Tammuz.